I know if I talk loudly, everybody can hear me, but we want to make sure that
It's on. Testing.
people can hear it.
No.
Is yours working?
Testing. No.
Mine?
Testing. Testing.
Can you hear
Testing.
this?
Is mine working though?
Yeah. Yours seems like.
Is it working or no?
I think mine is working, yes.
Yes,
And
yours
so
is
is David's.
No,
Okay.
try the mic, the other mic.
Testing. Testing. Testing.
Test, test.
You are hearing us. Okay. All right. Perfect. Then we'll resume the meeting. So welcome. I think I'm talking into the mic. All right. Welcome to the council meeting of December 17th, 2018. And please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we'll start with our minutes from October 8th closed session, October 8th regular session, October 22nd closed session, and October 22nd regular session.
Could I move them as a block?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Cohen and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any corrections or discussion of the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes all pass. And now we come to announcements, and I'm actually going to start with some announcements myself. So tonight is a very bittersweet night because we're saying goodbye to some people who have been fixtures in this room at our meetings for a very long time. So I'm going to start with Kathy Brzezinski, our clerk, and we have a proclamation for Kathy, which I'll read. And she said before the meeting that she loves to be the center of attention. So she's gonna love every minute of this.
Get your cameras out and be sure to take a photo.
Whereas Kathy Brzezinski has served the Princeton community faithfully for the past 33 years. And whereas Kathy began her career with Princeton in 1985 as secretary and became deputy clerk in September of 2000 and was appointed the municipal clerk in January 2016. And whereas Kathy's dedication and unselfish commitment to Princeton has been exemplified by her never-ending efforts to provide the professional link between our citizens and the governing bodies. And whereas she has earned the affection of a host of area residents who proudly call her friend, and her dedication to the best interests of the community has won her the high regard of all her associates. And whereas in her retirement, we wish her many happy days, enjoying the many pleasures of life and family. And whereas upon the occasion of her retirement, this proclamation is presented as a testimonial to the loyal and dedicated service which Kathy has contributed to the Princeton community through her service as the Princeton clerk. Now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor of Princeton, do hereby convey my heartfelt appreciation to Kathy and commend her for her many contributions to Princeton and extend my personal best wishes to those of council and staff for a happy and healthy future. Thank you, Kathy. We're so appreciative of everything you've done to help council do its work. Yeah, thanks. All right, and then we have two more goodbyes. I'm just going to read this because I feel like if I talk, I don't want to do what I did before and start crying.
Well, I can sing never say goodbye. No now.
So tonight is also the night that we say goodbye, but hopefully not really, you're not going too far, to Lance Liverman and to Heather Howard, and we're going to start with Lance. Whereas Lance Liverman has been a long-standing public servant and fixture of Princeton's governing body for the past 15 years as a township committeeman from 2003 to 2012, and as a Princeton councilman for the Consolidated Princeton starting in 2013, and served as the first council president for the Consolidated Princeton. And whereas Lance was born in Princeton Hospital, do you want me to say the day? In 1962, and spent most of his childhood in the house he now shares with his wife Latanya and daughters Kelsey, Ashlyn, and Savannah. And whereas his deep roots and devotion to his hometown made him an exceptionally effective councilman, it's often remarked that Lance knows everyone. And I'm going to add, and everyone loves Lance. Whereas Lance brought his positive, upbeat energy to his council work and always showed by example how to be a good listener and a servant leader. And whereas Lance served on the Public Safety Committee and Personnel Committee and as the council liaison to the boards of Corner House, Affordable Housing, Princeton Alcohol and Drug Addiction, and Princeton Housing Authority, and was a past liaison to the Princeton Human Services Commission. And whereas in addition to serving on the governing body, he is chairman of the Board of Trustees of the First Baptist Church of Princeton. And whereas Lance focused his energy in particular on advocating for affordable housing, support programs for youth, and a more equitable and inclusive community. And whereas this son of the community will be sorely missed. Now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor Princeton, do hereby convey my heartfelt appreciation to Lance and commend him for his many contributions to the Princeton community and extend my personal best wishes and those of Princeton Council and staff for a happy and healthy future. And furthermore, I do hereby proclaim Monday, December 17th, 2018, as Lance Liverman Day in Princeton, and urge all to applaud and pay tribute to this extraordinary person. And we have a couple more gifts for you too. Oh wait, okay, we'll do that at the end. Okay, we're gonna hold the gifts till the very end. All right, and then we're also saying goodbye tonight to Heather Howard. And we have a proclamation for you too, Heather. Okay. Whereas Heather Howard has served as a member of Princeton's governing body for the past 7 years, first in the borough of Princeton and then in the Consolidated Princeton. And whereas Heather is known for her warm, welcoming, passionate, and rapid-fire style of communicating. And whereas she used her extensive experience in state and federal government to enlighten her council work on behalf of Princeton. And whereas as a member of the faculty at Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs, Heather is director of 2 Robert Wood Johnson Foundation-funded programs that provide technical assistance to help states implement the Affordable Care Act. And I know she's fighting the fight right now. And whereas from 2008 to 2010, Heather served as New Jersey's Commissioner of Health and Senior Services. And whereas Heather also has significant federal experience, having worked as Senator Corzine's Chief of Staff and as Associate Director of the White House Domestic Policy Council and Senior Policy Advisor for First Lady Hillary Clinton. And whereas as Police Commissioner and Council Liaison to the Board of Health and Human Services Commission, Heather focused her efforts on enacting important public health and social service initiatives, such as community policing, wage theft enforcement, a community needs assessment, raising the tobacco age to 21, and saving the WIC clinic here in Princeton, as well as other initiatives to help the vulnerable members of our community. Now, therefore, I, Liz Lempert, Mayor Princeton, do hereby convey my heartfelt appreciation to Heather and commend her for her many contributions to the Princeton community and extend my personal best wishes and those of Princeton Council and staff for a happy and healthy future. And furthermore, I do hereby proclaim Monday, December 17th, 2018 as Heather Howard Day in Princeton and urge all to applaud and pay tribute to this extraordinary person. So you'll notice that Heather and Lance share share a day today. And I always think of them as like a dynamic duo on council. And even though they're very different people, I think they both just are driven by making this a more just community and making sure that we reach out to everybody and that everybody gets heard, that we do our best to make sure that everybody stays healthy and feels a part of this community. So I want to thank them for those efforts and for the model and that they've given to all of us. Now we wrap these up, and so I have to make sure I give the right one to each person. Okay, you'll switch if they're wrong. But I do think of the two of you as being just these pillars for council, and so these gifts are certificates to be cashed in this spring. We're going to be planting 2 trees for you, and they're going to be next to each other on Witherspoon Street so that you can serve the community together, and your trees will stand next to each other, serving the community together too. So hopefully I give you the right tree. Okay, yeah. And this is on behalf. You can sit under. Well, actually, I don't think you can sit under the tree and drink that. Do that in your own home.
You can apply to sit under the tree and drink.
Thank you. First, I was going to ask, does Heather and I get to keep our name tag when we leave? But I didn't know if it's city property. I didn't want to do that. Who would have dreamed that this day would come when I'm sitting at my at my last council meeting? I must say, it's been an honor and a pleasure to represent the residents of Princeton. I've truly loved being an ambassador for this loving community. I was thinking about listing all the items that I helped council and mayor do over the years, but I said I don't want to, that's too much of my story, so I just want to thank my wife, LaTanya, and my 3 daughters for allowing me the time to serve. And what I find most rewarding is working with this great team of elected officials, from Mayor Lambert to Councilwomen Crumiller, Fraga, and Howard, Councilman Quinn and Cohen, along with a terrific administrator, Mark DeShield, and fantastic clerk office. I mean, Kathy, Dolores, Dawn, Debbie, and Christine. And we have been so lucky to have positive legal representation from Lucille and Trish Cecil. Our police department is one of the best departments, I say, in the state and in the country, under the leadership of the young man you see there, Nick Sutter. And the future of our town rests with our youth. We must teach them and how to be community-minded and care for others. That is so important. And under the leadership of Gary de Blasio, Corner House has planted the seed in so many caring youth. My leaving Princeton Council was only comforted with knowing that Princeton will still have great employee leadership. The rec department with Mr. Captain Ben Stentz has always been a second home for our youth and will still be guided in a positive way. And the list of dedicated employees go on, from Maureen Folaway in affordable housing, Melissa Urias in human services, Deanna Stockton in engineering, Jeff Grosher in administration and health, Bob Huff in our infrastructure department, John Petnetti in building, Bob Gregory in emergency services, Joe Novak in fire and safety, Dan Van Matter and Chris Torres in public works, Elaine Cotronio in planning, and Jack West in land use and engineering, and Derek Bridger in zoning, and the many, 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 many other employees that I have learned to respect and care for deeply. You see, I've realized that the main business we are in is providing services to our residents with the biggest bang for the buck. I want to leave by thanking all of you for making my job so much easier. I salute the town of Princeton for caring and making sure that we take care of our residents. I'll still be around. I look forward to working with mayor, council members, and newly elected Councilwoman Eve Niedergang and Councilman Dwayne Williamson. What a great town we have, what a great people we can continue to be. In future meetings, when things look difficult and bleak, always try to inject some humor to stimulate the mind. You can always start off by saying, this is what Lance would have said, and just go on and on. You know, I've done this quite often, so. But I thank you from the bottom and the top of my heart, for I had a very, very nice elected official, man. Thank you.
As always, Lance is a very hard act to follow. Liz, you used the word bittersweet earlier, and that is definitely a word that resonates with me. I've been honored to serve for 7 years, 1 year on the Princeton Borough Council, and then 2 terms on the Princeton Council. And over that time, I've seen Princeton consolidate into one stronger and more effective and efficient government, yet we're still the same vibrant community. I've seen Princeton stand up for our values, whether that's being a welcoming community and serving the vulnerable, to building a police force that's a national model, to achieving the promise of consolidation and promoting transparent government. I would say the one constant throughout has been the tremendous people of Princeton, from our colleagues up here on the dais, to the dedicated municipal staff who serve our community so well, to the many engaged residents who give so much of their time and expertise. I just want to say a few words about each of you. Lance, I couldn't have asked for a better wingman. It's been my honor to serve and run with you. From you, I've learned the true meaning of service. And I do think if other people could, if I could learn from you, you start every comment with a thank you, right? To the people who serve, and that means so much. So you give so much of yourself to this job and to this community, and you will leave an indelible mark. Mayor Lempert, you lead us with such grace and sense of purpose. I could always count on your good judgment, and I will miss your vision and indefatigable spirit, although I will not miss the late night calls about what just happened or what's going to happen. And Council President Crummeller, Jenny, you and I go back to the days of the Borough Council, so we've seen it all. And I've learned so much from you, and really, truly appreciate your generous nature and your passion for service and good government. You stand for so much. Tim, you have brought so much to council, rigorous thinking, keen insights, and good humor, not to mention those vaunted millennial skills. And I wish we had been able to serve longer together, Tim. And Leticia and David, the same applies to you. You have been amazing additions to council this year, and I know that I will look forward to watching you continue to grow in your leadership and service for Princeton, and I know what good hands that Lance and I leave the council in, to Eve Niedergang and Dwayne Williamson. If you'll indulge me just a little bit more, a few staff, I want to thank Jeff Grosser. You have been, I've met many of the health officers across the state in my time working in health, and you are the best in the state, and we are so lucky to have you. And the recent accreditation for the Department of Health caps off years of tremendous work in our Department of Health. From preserving our WIC clinic, I look back to when we were going to lose the WIC clinic, and not only did we save it, but now it's expanding hours. So preserving services for moms and babies. To here in Princeton, Ebola touched us, or at least the threat of Ebola touched us. And you found new ways to work with the university, since we know diseases don't know boundaries like Nassau Street. And George DeFernando is not here, but please tell him I thought of him, because his steady hand at the Board of Health, especially after we lost the dear Dr. Charles Roget, has continued Princeton's leadership role in health. As the mayor mentioned, when Trenton wouldn't take steps to address the risks of smoking, the #1 preventable cause of death, we enacted landmark legislation, whether it was raising the smoking age to 21, licensing e-cigarette vendors, and keeping our parks and outdoors smoke-free. So we have an incredible record there. In human services, Elisa Nero was so great that she's now running all these programs for the state, and now Melissa Urias in her stead is doing a great job in protecting our most vulnerable, creating a welcoming community, addressing wage theft, a tremendous record there. And then, of course, we couldn't have protected our most vulnerable without law enforcement. And I'm struck by chiefs always referencing that law enforcement serves as guardians, not warriors, and has done that with such professionalism. And under his leadership, we have built really a model department that, that stands out among the nation, as we're having horrible vitriolic debates about practices across the country, we are doing the right thing here. So, very exciting. And I'm going to say this has been very meaningful work to me. Thank you.
I'll still call you late at night if that helps.
That might help. That might help, right?
All right.
Thank you.
You guys are a hard act to follow. But I think we'll continue with other announcements that are less emotional. David, do you have any announcements for this evening?
I guess this belongs in announcements better than in reports. I just wanted to mention that we did have a meeting on Saturday morning of the Grover Ave neighborhood group to introduce them to the Neighborhood Buddy Initiative, which was sort of rolled out at the end of October, and also Sustainable Princeton's Star Neighborhood Initiative, which is similarly trying to tap into the recently invigorated neighborhood organizing that we're seeing throughout the community. In the case of the Star neighborhoods, it's to encourage individuals to change their habits and live more sustainable lives and to be accountable to their neighbors to help them do that. So it was a great meeting. I hope it's the first of many. If anybody out there in the audience lives in a neighborhood that does have a neighborhood association of any kind, whether you just get together socially or you get together to advocate for policies that are good for your neighborhood, we would love to come and just take 5 or 10 minutes to tell you about these programs, because we're hoping to have them rolled out town-wide. So.
Ms. Lim, any announcements? Any announcements? No? Okay, I have a few announcements. The first is that tomorrow night in this room, NJTV is going to be hosting a community forum on poverty issues in Princeton. It's going to start at 6:30 p.m. and it's open to the public. On Wednesday, there's going to be a public information session on the Alexander Bridge project. And I also wanted to just remind everybody that reorg is going to be on Thursday, January 3rd.
Liz, do you want to just tell about the Alexander Road project in case people don't know just
yeah.
what it is? So
In case people don't know, there's 2 bridges on Alexander Road. They are both going to be replaced at some point next year. And the road will be entirely closed during that work. So it's going to cause traffic issues, obviously, so we're going to be discussing in more detail what the detours are going to be, and anyways, if people want to come to the meeting on Wednesday night, they can get a preview of what that work is going to entail. The good news is that both bridges are going to be worked on at the same time, so we won't have to shut it down again to work on each one. Is that a good enough explanation? And it's also, the other thing that's good is that this bridge work is being planned for, as opposed to having the bridge have an emergency repair necessary. So at least this way, we have a long lead time, we can get ready. And the other thing I was going to mention in reports, but I'll mention it now, is that New Jersey Transit announced earlier today that they finished the positive train control work that they were needing to do. I put in some calls about when the dinky would be reinstated. They were still non-committal about the exact date for that. But the good news is that they're on track for the rest. And certainly I think the dinky is going to be one of the best ways to get across Route 1 during the time that the bridge work is going on. Other quick announcements, there's free parking in the 2-hour zones on Sundays this month, so for the rest of December, and also Thursday evening, December 20th after 5 p.m., and Friday evening, December 21st after 5 p.m. And let's see, municipal offices will be closed December 24th and 25th, and also the 31st and January 1st for the holidays. And if you have trash that's would normally be picked up on Christmas Day, it will be picked up on Wednesday, December 26th. Are there any staff announcements? Nope. Okay. Then we'll move on to our award of recognition this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilman David Cohen for the honors.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm trying to figure out whether I should start my remarks with a whereas. Actually, let's set it apart. Susan Hoskins joined the Princeton Senior Resource Center as executive director about 18 years ago. And many of you may know, in written Hebrew, numbers are represented by letters of the alphabet. And the letters that comprise the number 18 also spell the word life. I can think of no more auspicious time for Susan to move on to the next adventure in her life than this 18th year. While Susan has been with us, she brought enormous vitality to the Senior Resource Center, extending Princeton's already stellar reputation for education to include lifelong learning offered by the Evergreen Forum. Under her leadership, Princeton became the first municipality in New Jersey to be recognized as an age-friendly community. She's dramatically grown programs such as Grand Pals and Home Friends to combat the scourge of loneliness and isolation among seniors. And with her social work background, she's impressively extended access to services and emotional support for older residents and their families. But crucially, Susan, at every opportunity, forcefully delivers the message that age-friendly policies and practices in a community benefit every member of the community. Mass transit that is easy to navigate and convenient helps seniors live full lives, but also benefits all users and the environment at the same time. Neighborhoods where residents look out for one another and provide help when needed allow seniors to age in place, but also build feelings of connection among all members of the community. Service opportunities for seniors in our schools help sustain lifelong engagement and a valuable sense of purpose, but also give our kids needed educational enrichment and the benefit of their elders' wisdom and one-on-one caring interactions. In Princeton, we value diversity, socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, and cultural. Less appreciated, but just as important, I would claim, is generational diversity. Diversity confers many benefits, exposing us to different points of view and helping us at the same time to grasp the unity of the entire human family. In this era of identity politics, when many groups are focused on their own special interests, it is refreshing to be able to honor a person and an organization that work every day to benefit every Princetonian while simultaneously helping to sustain and advance our invaluable generational diversity. Thank you, Susan.
I rarely miss the opportunity to make a few comments, and I'm going to try to get through it. Thank you very much for this honor. I'm proud of the growth of PSRC during my tenure, of the reputation, which is the envy of many communities in New Jersey and beyond. PSRC became an anchor institution in Princeton. Of developing a model resource center relied on by people who live or have family in Princeton from across the globe. of being able to support so many residents who want to age in place, of building a welcoming community where people find purpose, a remedy for loneliness, and can engage in lifelong learning. David said it all better than I did. But I'm proud of getting PSRC listed as an age-friendly community. Much of our success can be attributed to collaboration with the municipality, and I must say to many of the departments represented here tonight, and over 60 other community partners. It's now up to you to carry this forward. I love age-friendly community because of the premise that what is good for older people is good for all, that we can achieve great things for our community if we work together, and that we need to embed thinking of aging adult users for every aspect of planning as we go forward. The reality is that the population of people over age 65 is expected to grow by 64% between 2010 and 2030. I think you've seen evidence of this in the data that you review. We know younger seniors want to stay engaged, find purpose, continue to learn, and be in a community. PSRC is a key reason that many people choose to age in place in this community. Our participants are the volunteers for organizations throughout the community, grandpals, docents, board, and commission members. Our participants come into town to shop, for entertainment, and more. Nearly 90% of older adults want to remain in their communities, probably including all of you. Here, they rely on PSRC to connect them to area resources to do this successfully. This population shift is going on worldwide. The impact is already visible. We need to be ready. We need sufficient housing, transportation, resource information, and education in multiple formats. Emergency planning, health and wellness services, social participation, and opportunities for aging adults to work and volunteer. Recreation, neighborhood groups, yay Dave, support for family caregivers, and safety. These are all goals of the Age-Friendly Community Network. So I hope that Princeton will continue to be involved in that movement, which now includes 311 communities and 4 states. I am confident that PSRC will continue to keep up with best practices in the field of aging. To fulfill our role, PSRC needs the resources, the space, and the staff to continue to be leaders in this field. We need to begin to renovate the Suzanne Patterson building so that we can better meet the needs of the programs that are offered here. Thank you again for this honor. I trust that you will support my successor as you have supported me for 17 years. And I want to thank my board and my staff who have worked together on this through these years. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service, Susan. It's hard to imagine PSRC without you. So you're a you're going to be a really hard act to follow, but you've done so much for the organization and so much for the community. We're really appreciative. Thank you. All right, and now we come to the point of the meeting where we have comments from the public for items not already on the agenda, and we'll start with people who signed up on the sign-up sheet, and then I'll open it up to others. So first to sign up was Adam Bierman.
I was called up again to speak on someone else's behalf. This is for Heather and Lance. Paul Sharma called me up. Excuse my attire, too. He called me up a couple hours ago and from Cape Canaveral, Florida. He's watching a satellite go up. But he said, yeah, but he wanted someone to personally come and say to you that thank you for all that you've done, your great work, your expertise, intelligence, patience, and empathy. And he knows that he hopes you'll stick around and serve in the community in some capacity. And he wishes you all the best for you and your family.
Thanks. And then I want to call up former mayor and former councilperson Bernie Miller.
Thank you all for giving me an opportunity to make a few brief remarks tonight. About 40 years ago, when I first considered the possibility of running for elected office, a friend, a mentor, and also a former mayor of Princeton Township gave me what he thought was some good advice. He said, don't go into political life looking for friends. If you need another friend, get a dog. That advice was really wrong and proven wrong by my experience on Princeton Township Committee and Princeton Council. And I'm very pleased to count the two members of Princeton Council that I speak of tonight, Heather Howard and Lance Liverman, amongst my friends. They exemplify what is right and good about public service. They did not enter public service to represent a narrow interest or a single issue or to satisfy egotistical needs, and certainly not with the expectation of financial reward. They came to public service with the goal of improving the lives of their fellow citizens and residents of our community. This they have accomplished with dignity, grace, and wisdom, and for this I salute them as they complete their years of service.
Thanks, Bernie. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on any items that are not already on the agenda?
I'll speak. Dwayne Williamson, 176 Jonathan Dayton Court. There's so many goodbyes tonight. Just first of all, I'd like to thank Kathy and Susan for your services to our wonderful town. And I would be remiss if I didn't say something about, following in Heather and Lance's footsteps. A lot of you don't know, Heather, Lance, and I have a lot more in common than you know. For example, I've been following in Heather's footsteps for many decades now. Heather was an American Field Service exchange student to Turkey a few years before I was, and I went in 1987. And I think you went maybe 3 or 4 years before I did. Right. And then Lance, where I grew up in Trenton on Vine Street, Lance used to live on Brunswick Avenue right around the corner from Vine Street. Yeah. So, I guess even I have big shoes to fill, so we thank you for all your years of service, and we definitely, I guess I could speak for Eve on this also, we certainly plan to be following up with your institutional knowledge. So those calls that I guess Heather, the late night calls Heather was given to Liz, I think both of you can expect late night calls from us. So, so be prepared. Thank you.
Late morning's better for me, but I'm just speaking for myself. Heather likes late night, but thank you.
Couldn't let the opportunity pass. I certainly can't speak as eloquently as former Mayor Miller did, but I just wanted to say thank you, Lance and Heather, for all that you've done for the community. You gave what I think of when I think about your time on council is giving voice to those who didn't have a voice in the community, and I thank you for doing that. I shouldn't admit how long I've known Kathy Brzezinski. I can't. Much longer than the time that she's been here with you, both at the township and with the municipality, and I wish you all the best. I know your family's looking forward to spending more time with you, that beautiful little granddaughter. And thank you, Susan. It's been a real pleasure working with you, connecting the Senior Resource Center and resources at the university, and certainly our partnerships between the university and the Resource Center are stronger because of your work and your partnership, so thank you. Congratulations, everyone.
Thanks, Kristen.
Wow. Tom Parker. I just want to say thank you to Heather and Lance. Kathy, you too. You've intercepted many messages and got it to the right place for me, and I thank you so much for that. But Lance, I remember this guy that sit up in borough chambers with me back when I was down to 2 children at the time, and you know, and I have to say it's been a great journey. I certainly appreciate what you've done for the community. All right, I absolutely thank you for the impact that you've had on my children and helping us get them off to school and all these kind of things. And I'll save the rest of the information that I have about you for the roast whenever that happens. But I really do thank you much, Heather. The few coffees that we had and the wisdom that I was able to gain from that experience as we do this kind of thing together, I certainly appreciate you for that. And I just want to say that. Thank you so much for both.
Thanks. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay. We'll move on then to reports, and the first report is from Jeff Grosser, our health officer on Princeton's Health Department accreditation. And while you're getting ready there, I just want to congratulate the health department again, thank all the support from Councilwoman Howard and the work of staff. It's sounds sort of bureaucratic accreditation, but it's a really big deal, and I think it just is a sign of the excellent work that the department's doing.
For soccer fans out there, this was Heather's 90th minute, and we accomplished accreditation. Yeah, it's just like golden goal. You know, to sit here in front of all of you and Heather's last meeting and talk about the fact that we accomplished accreditation after 4.5 years of planning is pretty remarkable. So thank you, Mayor and Council. As I noted tonight, accumulates a 4.5-year journey that we've embarked upon towards national public health accreditation. Although most of you have heard about accreditation, and some are even aware of its process, tonight I'm hoping to shed a little bit more light on the momentous achievement that this was for the department and for Princeton. Overseen by the Public Health Accreditation Board and jointly supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, accreditation seeks one primary goal: to improve and protect the health of the public by advancing quality and performance of health departments in the country. The standards and measures established by FAB go above and beyond what is required by local health departments in New Jersey and essentially assist departments in establishing a system of success as we try to make communities more healthy. National accreditation seeks to measure health departments' performance against a set of nationally recognized, practice-focused, and evidence-based standards. Prior to accreditation, the primary standards for the health department were required to meet were those standards established by the New Jersey Department of Health, which are called the Public Health Practice Standards. The New Jersey standards do in fact establish fundamental public health services that should be provided to a community. However, they do not focus on quality improvement of a department or the continuous development, refinement, and distribution of our core areas of operation. To make more sense of this, the New Jersey Public Health Practice Standards, if you think about it from a mathematical perspective, they would merely ask you for the answer to an equation. What accreditation seeks is how you got to that answer. You know, show your work, as I like to say. So that's what accreditation is all about. How did you get to where you wanted to be? So the 7 steps of accreditation and our roadmap are listed here. In September 2014, I'd been in the department for about 5 months, and it had just overcome a meningitis B outbreak and had a number of other outbreaks that had caused the department to be quite thin. So as a result, we were looking for ways to create a more robust operation. We went to the Board of Health to indicate support and our intent to apply for this national accreditation, and concurrently administration approved our ability to designate funds. Shortly after, our department submitted a preliminary application that was required to include three main prerequisites: a community health assessment, a community health improvement plan, and a strategic plan. Once the application was submitted, we were required to attend a 2-day training in Alexandria, Virginia, where we learned all about the EFAB online portal, where we'd be doing our application, as well as the accreditation process. It also gave us an opportunity to network with other health departments from around the country and learn a little bit about their operations. Once the training was complete, the health department was given 12 months to submit documentation covering 12 domains, which I'll dive into on the next slide. Over the course of our documentation phase, the health department utilized several undergraduate and graduate level interns from the College of New Jersey, Rutgers University, George Washington University, and Princeton University. Interns provided great supplemental support during this time frame and were a necessity for a smaller department like ours to be successful throughout the process. After our documentation was submitted, FAB was assigned us 3 evaluators to our application. These evaluators were acting as more or less consultants to our department, and we're going to go through all the documentation we were going to submit, as well as visit the health department on their official site visit. The evaluators spent approximately 6 months on evaluating all of our documentation as part of our application. Once the documentation phase was complete, we went through the rigorous 2-day site visit with the department. The site visit consisted of a physical departmental visit, where the visitors reviewed procedures, current operations, ADA checklists, and technologies utilized within the office, as well as domain interviews with staff, all of this occurring on the first day of the visit. On the second day of the visit, the site visitors met with community stakeholders, where we had 20 community stakeholders involved, and a meeting with our Board of Health. The site visit concluded with a closing interview, where site visitors provided their final input, including their observations, strengths and weaknesses of the department, and opportunities for growth. Final recommendations from FAB determined that there was a few reports they sought more detail on. As a result, our decision on reaching accredited status did not happen until November 2018. And looking ahead, the department's going to seek reaccreditation in 2023. So what's at the heart of accreditation? For anybody that's a public health buff out there, this pinwheel here is basically our standards and measures, the 10 essential public health services, which are developed to clarify the role of public health and provide a framework for public health systems. They're organized under the 3 core functions of public health: assessment, policy development, and assurance. And public health accreditation is divided into 12 domains of public health service. The first 10 domains address the 10 essential public health services. Domain 11 addresses management and administration, and Domain 12 addresses governance and how we interact with our Board of Health. The first, Monitor Health, looks at conducting assessments focused on population health status, health issues facing the community, and incorporates a rigorous 3-year community health assessment that we complete to find out where our resources should be focused. Diagnose and investigate health problems and environmental public health hazards to protect the community, looking at investigations of both infectious and environmental issues. Our third, informing and educating public health issues and functions. What type of health promotion strategies are we using in the office? Are materials relevant and pertinent in the community? Mobilizing community partnerships, identifying and solving health problems. How do we report to the community? When does that happen? And how often? Developing public health policies and plans. Is our department prepared, at least from an administrative capacity, to handle what can occur in Princeton? When we began this process in 2014, our policies and procedures were next to nothing. Now that we're in our current state, we have policies for different divisions and procedures for how to handle various outbreaks in different settings. Enforcing public health laws and regulations. How do we enforce ordinances, regulations, statutes? Are we able to communicate with our facilities to get them into compliance from an educational standpoint? How do we promote strategies to improve access to healthcare service? Does our department do enough to make sure our community is able to reach the healthcare services they need? As Councilwoman Howard mentioned, the WIC program was a huge component of this documentation as we displayed how individuals can reach the WIC clinic as well as the community health center across the street at Bristol Myers Squibb. Maintaining a competent public health workforce. Do we consider workforce development a pillar of our organization? When we started, again, one thing that we did internally were administrative evaluations of staff. What we found through this process was that there was necessary goal setting for each individual staff, what they want to accomplish in the following year. And I'm proud to say that now this is actually municipal-wide, where staff are performing goals and seeking ways to improve themselves professionally. Evaluating and continuously improving processes, programs, and interventions. Quality improvement is one of the main prerequisites for this process. In our case, we created a quality improvement plan and a team that meets monthly. And as part of that plan, each staff complete aim or opportunity statements on a monthly basis and subsequently turn them in to do plan, do, study, act cycles in order to optimize improvements within our operations. Contribute and apply the evidence base of public health. When we seek to make new ordinances, are we looking at public health evidence-based practices? Are they backed up? Maintain administrative and management capacity. Is there management and administration available that supports function of the health department? And building strong and effective relationships with governing entity. How do we report to mayor and council? How do we report to the Board of Health and gain their support? And as you can see, there's many components being evaluated by FAB, and each domain asks for a substantial amount of documentation. So looking at the documentation selection and submission, the page in front of you is actually the EFAB site where we spent quite a significant amount of time. This is where we upload all of our documentation and gain support and approval on various measures. As you can see, there's 100 measures up there spanning the 12 domains. So what was the difference maker with accreditation, and what's the benefit to the department and the community? As I mentioned, quality improvement is one of the main themes of accreditation and supports all of our operations on a daily basis now. QI is ingrained in each health department employee and their daily workflow. It pushes staff to continuously think of ways to improve our team and the health of the people in Princeton. It also helps us to identify departmental strengths and weaknesses. Prior to accreditation, our method to evaluate how we were doing was based upon quantitative analysis from the year prior. Now we're looking at various assessments, customer service surveys, internal workforce statistics, and best practices from across the country to make sure we're doing everything we can do to improve. Grant funding's already been released in terms of those accredited health departments and only for accredited health departments. There's various grant funding that's only being distributed to health departments that have shown a commitment to success and continuous quality improvement. It's also greatly improved our communication, which has improved our partnerships and operations. Recently, Ohio stated that all local health departments must reach accredited status by 2020. It's my belief soon that New Jersey will do that as well. Obtaining accreditation right now puts our department ahead of the other 90 or so health departments in the state. And last but not least, if anybody's interested in more information, the FAB website is listed here. I'm also working with staff on a PhD accreditation page that will show some of the best practices that we've realized and other benefits to Princeton. And in closing, I want to thank obviously a few people that have made accreditation happen. As I mentioned, this wasn't a short period of time, so there's quite a few people, so this might be a little lengthy. Obviously, former Commissioner of New Jersey's Department of Health, Councilwoman and liaison to the Princeton Board of Health, Heather Howard. My first interview with Princeton was back in February 2014. And, you know, when you're interviewing for a position, you start going down the list of people you think might be in the interview. And when I Googled Heather Howard and Wikipedia came up and said Heather Howard is an American health policy expert, worked in the Clinton administration as chief of staff of Corzine, I stopped reading and I started worrying because I said, I'm obviously not going to talk the talk of public health at that meeting. And I just imagined going into that interview, her asking a question and not understanding a single word she said. So I have to thank Heather because really all along the way she's been a huge guide, and we're going to miss her tremendously. So thank you very much for your support there. Former Commissioner of New Jersey Department of Health, we have a couple of those, and Chair to the Princeton Board of Health, Dr. George D. Ferdinando. Former Board of Health Chair, the late Dr. Charles Roget. Again, as Heather mentioned, was just a tremendous mentor and support for the department and for the Board of Health. Administrator DeShield, Mayor Lambert, and Council. Obviously, we wouldn't have gone through the process if we didn't have your support, especially from the funding capacity, so thank you for taking a shot with us there. Princeton Police Department, they've been through accreditation a few times. Chief is one of those department heads that he'll talk to you like he's on your team. So, obviously much appreciated there for you and your staff. 15 undergraduate and graduate level interns who all work for free. So we thank them as well. I know they're out there watching, sure. And of course, the Princeton Health Department staff. Each staff member acted as an instrumental part of this achievement and should be very proud to be part of an accredited health department. Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congrats, Jeff.
Does anybody have any questions for Jeff?
I have one question. You mentioned now that we're accredited, we can maybe be able to receive grants. And I asked Heather, have we received any money yet? so I know in the future, maybe.
Yeah, we haven't received any money yet, but at this point, like I said, we're on the lookout for those because we'll be one of 3 local health departments in New Jersey that could apply for them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Jeff? Okay. All right. Thank you. Next report is the Civil Rights Commission final report of the review subcommittee. And I know there's 3 members of the subcommittee, Councilman Liverman, Councilman Fraga, and Councilman Quinn. I don't know who is going to take the lead on this, if you want.
So I'll take the lead, Mayor. We've filed our final recommendations, which don't differ that much from the report in August. They were reviewed by the Civil Rights Commission at its October meeting, and I think it's the timing is kind of fitting that it's Councilman Liverman's last meeting. He was a member of the original Civil Rights Committee, Civil Rights Commission, and both he and Councilwoman Fraga were great in going through this process. So basically, we agreed that we should retain the name of the Princeton Civil Rights Commission. We are calling for the orientation process to be revamped, specifically for there to be a legal session at the beginning of the year with the administrator and an attorney to talk about the commission's authority, and we envision this session as being similar to the annual planning board legal session where members have the opportunity to talk with both staff and with the attorney. I'm happy to report that the commission held its first retreat this year with the State Division of Civil Rights, and I think the overwhelming sentiment was to make this an annual event, and so that we're just recommending that go on. The conflict resolution process is the main part of the recommendations. The enabling ordinance calls for a subcommittee to conduct voluntary non-binding conflict resolution up to 4 members. We know that was informed by quorum decision. We'd like to get a little more specific and say that at least 2 members, 2 commissioners must participate. The subcommittee also saw value in having as many members of the commission who wanted to be trained for conflict resolution to be trained. And so the question for our council is about the requirements, the required changes to the ordinance and what that process would look like.
Yeah, I reviewed the recommendations, went back and looked at the original ordinance. I think it's really just a question of revising a couple of the provisions in there, and that's something that we could take up, in January, perhaps at your second meeting or the first, depending on how quickly we can get the language fixed. And then it would be like anything else: introduction, public hearing, adoption.
Great. I think the sooner the better. I know the commission is eager to restart conflict resolution. So if we could make that a January goal. And then there's also a part where we talk about expanding the materials for the intake process of conflict resolution. Currently, people who seek the non-binding voluntary conflict resolution are handed a sheet that talks a lot about the public nature of the documents that are involved in the process, that everything is operable, and it's silent about what experience has told us works best in this process, which is that there be an expectation of confidentiality. And so I think that's probably it. I'd invite Councilwoman Fraga or Councilman Liverman to any other comments?
I did have a comment. Under the expanding the materials that are going to be included in the intake process for conflict resolution, there's a reference that the commission will reserve the right to suspend conflict resolution process if the process has been compromised. And I would suggest that that seems vague, and so we should expand the description, whether it's in the process, in the document that highlights the process, but definitely to make sure that the parties are well informed as to what would constitute the process, what would compromise the process.
Thank you. The point is well taken. I think that we viewed that largely as media coverage, but I leave that to the discretion of the commission. Since it's not a part of the ordinance, it requires policy changes. So I think Mr. Parker would be able to help us out with that.
Yeah, I just want to say that I just want to take my hat off to Councilman Tim Quinn and Councilwoman Letitia Fraga for staying the course. Also, Chairman of the Civil Rights, Tommy Parker, who's sitting in the audience today, and saying I just think it's so important to have things clarified. And you mentioned before to move forward, and I think that's a great idea that in January, I won't be sitting here, but whoever's sitting here, I see my other great friends over here sitting here, that you guys sit here and move forward. I think it's important for the community to have something in place that every resident can feel that they have a voice. And I think that this is great. I don't have any add-ons or subtractions. I think that that Tim laid it out fairly well. Thank you.
Ms. Carmela?
Yeah, thank you, all of you, so much for working on this, and it looks really reasonable, and I can see that it's improving over time. I wonder, I haven't heard how you're doing, and is there a plan to make some, I know you can't give out specifics, but a report to us about how many people you've have seen over the year?
So the ordinance does call for an annual report to be made. Obviously, since the conflict resolution piece was dormant this year during review, the commission won't report on that, but they've been very active, the commissioners, out in public doing Know Your Rights sessions, and they had a salon earlier this month at the public library about LGBTQI issues that are going to be covered. They're going to be coming back in January to present the results of the MEI report. So I would say that we know from discussions with Human Services that there was one case that would have been referred to the conflict resolution subcommittee that went straight to the State Division of Civil Rights. So we don't know what the outcome of that was, but in that instance, what council set out to be how it would work in the interim, it did in fact work.
Thank you.
Can I add, also initially, the idea or the process as for putting together the annual report, I don't believe one has been done to date. But in the initial discussion when we were drafting the ordinance, I understood that it was also going to include complaints made directly to Human Services that did not make it to conflict resolution or to the CRC, and also anyone that went through the affirmative action officer that wouldn't have gone to civil rights. So just to capture what type of issues we may have here in Princeton. It may have been even instances where something was resolved without going to CRC. We would still want to capture that information.
That sounds great. I think the rest of the council, the council would probably, it would be good for us to hear about it. We're proud of what you're doing too, so thank you.
But that means that would need to be done in collaboration with Human Services and our affirmative action officer. And I'm not talking about details as to names or incidents, but just
numbers.
What general, yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right. I just want to add my thanks to the group who's been working on this. And
Thank you. I think that we approach this as how can we strengthen this and raise the visibility of the commission, and I think that we certainly took the time that was needed to make sure that we reached the proper outcome. And again, I hope there's consensus among the members who are going to be up here in January that we move changes to the ordinance immediately, that we prioritize that.
okay, great. Thank you. All right, next is the Mercer at Play grant report, and I'd like to invite up Director of Recreation, Ben Stentz. And while Ben is coming up, for those who don't know, this is a county grant that Princeton used to help pay for the Mary Moss Playground, and now there's a new round, and we want to make sure that we're well positioned to benefit from the next round of grant money.
Thank you, Mayor Lempert. If you'll allow me, just on behalf of my staff, current and past, and the Recreation Commission, I want to also thank Councilwoman Howard for your service, Councilman Liverman, both of you. Lance and I go way, way back. Those of us that are from here and still here kind of have a thing, so I thank you. And there was one year, many years ago, I think, where you snuck in as the township liaison to the Joint Rec Board many moons ago, so thank you both.
And I think he was a former employee, weren't you?
He got his start at Princeton Rec. I don't want to brag on his behalf, but yes.
He's going to be testing the ice again?
It's been all downhill from,
Yeah,
from there.
I've done, not to cut you off, Ben, but I've done some, the recreation department almost killed me. First, I had to go over at Community Park North over here and check for snakes on wood piles. And then one year they sent me out on the ice. This was before safety. This was before Jeff Grosser came here about safety, because I had to walk on the ice to make sure it was, thick enough so no one would fall in. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? I have a little chisel and a hammer. I'm chiseling in the middle of the ice, and I'm putting a ruler down there. And I'm thinking in my head, this looks kind of stupid. But I did it anyway. So I just want to thank the rec department for really, creating a very terrific man here.
You're welcome. And just so you know, technology hasn't changed. That's exactly what we still do on the ice. It's a right angle ruler, right? Yeah, I know. I've done it. And I also want to thank Kathy as she leaves. Kathy and I have been buddies for a long time, and she also got her start at the rec department as a CP pool lifeguard, and she hates when I tell that story. But thank you, Kathy. You've been good to me for a long time, and I appreciate it. And one more shameless plug. Tomorrow night at the poverty clinic that Mayor Limpert mentioned, my wife's going to be on the panel with the mayor, so you got to show up. We can get a big crowd out in Lance and heckle her. So, but I'm here to talk about the Mercer at Play grant that's been made available for Mercer County, as Mayor Limpert mentioned. I just want to give an update on where we are. The previous grant was used for the award-winning Mary Moss Playground Project, Engineer Stockton. We're proud to say that. And we could not, per the county rules, apply for this next round of funding until that project was done. So as you all know, it wrapped up this summer. The Recreation Commission had formed a subcommittee prior to that to start to consider projects that might be appropriate for this next round of funding, really trying to look hard at what the needs are of the people that we're trying to serve. And so the Recreation Commission has identified either expanding and improving our athletic field inventory, or if an opportunity presents itself, to expand and increase our inventory. We've communicated that in an initial meeting with Mayor Limpert, Councilwoman Fraga, and I believe Council President Crummiller was there a couple months back. But we want to push forward with artificial turf, and artificial turf that has lights on it, and there's a number of reasons why. Turf provides a lot of advantages. It provides playability 10+ months a year, as long as there's not snow on the ground. It provides a chance to play quickly after bad weather, particularly rain. If you have proper drainage, you can get on it quickly, unlike our natural grass fields that if we get a lot of rain, they just become mud pits and weeks go by where our groups can't get onto them. It provides a safe, consistent, steady playing environment, playing field, which reduces injuries. And the lights part really will exponentially create more blocks of time for these groups to use, particularly in the fall and the winter when the sun's going down so early. The community sport groups that we're representing is well over 3,000 Princeton residents, and those are the folks that we can put a hard number on. There's many others that use athletic fields around this community in a more drop-in fashion that we don't have the ability to put a clear number on, but we see them every day at different facilities using baseball diamonds, general recreation areas, soccer fields, etc. And the nature of youth sports, as many of you know, if you've had kids, I speak of youth sports in this case in particular, is that as opposed to a generation ago where fall was reserved for soccer and football and field hockey and spring was a baseball thing, all of these sports are 3 or 4 seasons a year now. That is the culture nationally. It's not a Princeton issue, it's a national issue. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing. That's a whole separate presentation that I'll be making at the next meeting maybe. But the reality is the demand from the people in this community is very high for athletic fields, and we are not meeting that demand currently, and at the rate they're requesting, our grass fields never get to be rotated out and rested, which is best practice for natural grass, so that they can recover and you can do maintenance to have healthy turf, level playing surfaces, etc. So we're not resting our fields because we can't. The demand is very high. So there's a deadline to apply for this next round of funding with the county, which is July of 2019. That deadline, in one sense, looms over me because we want to get our application in, but on the other hand, strategically, we're trying to be very patient about dropping that application in with the county for a number of reasons. One, we're considering a number of different possible municipal locations that we might convert into artificial turf if this project gains some steam. But probably more importantly, and the reason that we're being patient, is that we don't know what may come next from our public school system as far as a next referendum that they may put forward to the community. We know what they passed recently, which was a scaled down model, which was more facilities related, a little bit of athletic stuff in there maybe, but my guess is as good as anybody's what and if they put another referendum forward in 2019. But if they do, and it presents an opportunity to partner with them in a way that would be cost effective and efficient as far as sharing that facility, for the good of both organizations. I'd hate to throw our application into the county right now or in February or March and then find out in June or July that they are going to present a plan to the State Department of Education that might include some adjustment or moving of facilities. Again, there's a lot of balls in the air on their side. That presents the opportunity, and then we say, gosh, if we would have just waited, there's a chance to maybe make a deal that benefits both organizations that's going to cover more users. The timing is a little bit tricky because July is our deadline, and obviously the schools have a lot of work to do between now and when they present something else to the state, if they do that in 19, and I don't know that that's a given that they will. But I do get a sense in meeting with Superintendent Cochran that if they're going to put something to the state for a 2019 referendum vote, they need to have that ready sometime mid-year to present to the state a few months out. And so I think if we hold tight and get into spring and then early summer of 19, we're going to have a sense what their plan is. If their plan that would obviously be pending State Board of Ed or State Department of Ed approval and voter approval, seems like there's an avenue in there that we might be able to slot into and work with them as a partnership, then that would be part of what we propose to the county. If there doesn't seem to be a way that we can jive with what they're going to propose, or if they just don't get it even off the ground in 19, they decide to wait till 20 or whatever could happen on their end, well, then we would move forward with trying to convert one of our existing athletic fields to artificial turf. So that's where we are. We're eager, but we're trying to be patient. We think it's intelligent to just hold our horses as long as we possibly can on this to see if there's a way to partner up. We would love to partner with them if there's a smart way to do it that's going to be cost effective for the residents and the taxpayers. If it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But at this point, we want to hold tight and see where it lands.
Ben, could I
Yeah, Mr. Cohen?
just ask a question about that? Because my understanding in conversations with Andrew Kuntz, one of the freeholders, is that delays in spending the Mercer at Play money put us at a disadvantage, in applying for grants and so forth. And my concern with partnering with the schools is that even if they do put a plan together, in time to partner with you for 2019, it's going to be years before there's actually going to be installation of whatever field they want to put in. And I wonder whether do you feel like it makes sense to wait for them?
I think your point is a fair one. In regards to Andrew, who, as you guys know, you all know, is not only a freeholder but a Recreation Commission member here in Princeton. Some of the tightening of the county's timeline on grant things may be a result of delays that have happened here. We've kind of joked about that. That may be true. There was a 3-year window to apply for this current grant, but you could not apply until Mary Moss was done, so we're leaving ourselves with a relatively tight time frame. And then once we apply, say July of 19, you have 3 calendar years from that moment to complete your project. So to your point, if all the things lined up and the schools had an opportunity to partner and they put it to the voters in the fall or early winter of 19, that got approved, we would then start working. But I don't disagree that whatever they might do is going to be a massive project if that's the route they go. And for us to be tied into that could create some delays. Is that weighing that against the opportunity to partner and probably save some money by working together? How to weigh those against each other, I don't know if I know the answer to that exactly right now, but I get your point.
Yeah, I guess just as a follow-up question, I don't know if you can be any more specific about how it's an advantage to us to partner with them, or is it just an advantage to the taxpayers in some way? I mean, we get a bigger grant or something if we were partnering together, or?
We do not get a larger grant by partnering with them, so that's not it. But I think the biggest advantage is, again, depending on what they decide to do, if that opportunity presents itself, the advantage would be that we could increase the overall inventory of athletic fields by +1 or maybe +2, 1.5, whatever that number is, and that in itself is a big advantage for everybody. But it's not a dollar, the dollars don't jump up by getting locked in with them as far as the county is concerned.
Yeah, is there a number, or you just like a grant number that we're applying for, like $1 million?
Dollar number? Yes.
$2 million?
I should have said that up front,
$3 million?
Lance. The county grant is $500K with a $500K municipal match requirement. So there's $1 million. I think it's safe to say, while we haven't dug, I say we, Deanna and I purposely haven't gone too far down this path on this project, but building a artificial turf field with lights and some of the required amenities that you're going to need, it is going to exceed $1 million. So I'm going to be upfront about that now. I don't know what that number exactly is, Lance. I think that number may differ if we're converting an existing field versus building something brand new. There's lots of other bells and whistles that you can consider with a project like this, some that might be very worthwhile, not just in regards to the athletic part. For instance, there's pretty sophisticated stormwater management systems that they're now building below these artificial turf fields. The university has done some of this. Not my area of expertise by any stretch, but from what I understand, big benefit to your community, but it costs money to build it and install it. So these are all things that as we get further down the line, we'll have to consider if that costs an extra $100,000, let's say, council will have to decide, is the long-term benefit of doing that worth it to spend that money or not. And when we get to that point, obviously I'll be here to present, the options, the things to consider and what they cost, and then the governing body can decide.
Great. Thanks, Ben. And what you'll need from us at some point is a resolution of support when you apply for the grant and...
Yes, thank you. I did in the capital budget request that I submitted to Mark and Sandy a while back. I did put the matching funds in there as needing to be approved for 2019, because to submit the grant, you have to have a resolution from your governing body that the matching portion from the municipality is in place and approved. Whether you spend it that year is a different story, but you have to show that it's there. And so once the capital budget goes through in February or March or whatever, I'll prepare a resolution kind of in sync with when I'm going to submit the application to the county, or slightly before I submit the application to the county.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a lot of reports tonight. Next report is our 2018 goals update. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't read into that. I was just...
Forgot about Lefty.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Thank you. Good seeing you as well. And also, before I start, if you could just indulge me, I wanted to recognize very briefly our three important people as well that are departing us. Kathy, I just wanted to say thank you to you for your friendship, for your kindness, and for your patience each day, especially with the police department. I know we could be demanding at times, and you, ever since consolidation, you greeted me with a smile every day, and you made each day much brighter, and we're going to miss you very, very much. We really are. And to Councilwoman Heather Howard, Police Commissioner Heather Howard, and Councilman Lance Liverman. 6 years ago, we began some very important work with public safety in the police department and forming our new police department, which was really uncharted waters in the state. And it was your leadership that was super instrumental in formulating and implementing our cutting-edge policy and cutting-edge police operations. I mean, we did some really deliberate and groundbreaking work in public safety. You helped cultivate a new police culture that was new, very new, in so many different ways that is still being built today. You've built that foundation, and you led the way as we reached new heights with community policing. It was your leadership and your deliberate work in public safety that really created those paths for us. So, and for me personally, you've both absolutely served as mentors to me. I've learned so much about so many different things from you, from your wisdom and experience. You both epitomize servant leadership. I heard that said about you before, which kind of validates that, because that's how I think of you. Definitely you epitomize that philosophy, and you taught me the importance of empathy and compassion in public policy development. I mean, that's really what kind of came out of those meetings, about how we could better police in a compassionate and caring way, which was part of the new culture, and you were instrumental in that. And you know, you've left an indelible mark on me and on the police department, and I want to publicly thank you both for your advocacy, your partnerships, and your friendships. We will build on your foundation as we continue to do the good work that you started. So thank you. And to build on that, this is very apropos, because my updates tonight have to do with work that we started 6 years ago, that the state, I guess the state was listening to Princeton, and they finally, 6 years later, started making some moves that we were talking about 6 years ago. So the Attorney General, if you haven't heard, I know members of council are pretty much up to date on this, but for the public, has issued a new immigration directive. I think the policy that we formulated 6 years ago is more comprehensive, and is, it was really, I think this directive supplements it in many ways, but we've been doing almost everything in this policy for 6 years. One thing that came out of that, which I think is awesome, is that it mandates statewide training each year, and every department gets the same training. So what we'll do is we'll do that training and then complement it with some of our own in-house training that'll supplement that. So that's a really good thing. I was just informed, I guess last week, that there's the Superior Court of Mercer County is in the process of issuing a new, it's not a policy, but an order on failure to appear warrants under $500, and the process by which they're adjudicated by police departments. So there's going to be a policy forthcoming that is much less intrusive than arrest. And we've been talking about this for, I don't know, for a long time. And we've been moving towards it, and I think this was the next step. So I don't know if it's going to be a statewide binding order or it's just for Mercer County, but I understand that it's coming in the first quarter of the new year. So as soon as I get the specifics on it, I'll update you on that. And then real quickly, you may have heard or read, the Star-Ledger did a comprehensive report on use of force and the statistics statewide. So the Attorney General had a very good approach. The Attorney General said that the state had done a poor job. He took responsibility, although he just started, this year, but that the state had done a poor job at having a central repository for that information and statewide analysis. So that's a good thing. That'll be coming. But the good news is, locally, we've been doing it for 6 years. We have, since consolidation, we have an internal 4-level review on every single use of force incident. Every single time there's a use of force incident, it's reviewed by 4 supervisors, including me. There's a formal finding made on whether it was appropriate, and if there's any supplemental training or policy development that needs to be done because of that use of force. We also have been tracking trends in the use of force and many other categories combined with the use of force in terms of race, gender, ethnicity, and other factors, looking for patterns with individual officers and in the aggregate. We've been doing all this, and we do it every quarter, and we analyze this information every quarter. And I've been reporting this for a while now that we've been doing this. And one thing I will say with regards to that report, because of our internal process, I did notice in some of the stats that they reported for us, we noticed inaccuracies. Some of them are statistical. There was just some. It wasn't 100% accurate in terms of what the stats were for Princeton. So, but the good news is too, that's all on our website. It's all on our police reports, and that can be, the public can see that each month as we report on use of force. And if there's any questions, I'm here to take them.
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Chief. I got too emotional before, so I didn't get to finish my remarks about you, and I'm not going to say them now because I think I'll get emotional again. So I'll catch up with you later. Maybe I should say, well, I'll email you the remarks, yeah. Because you have been, I mean, you have been my hero. You've been our hero, so I'll just leave it at that. But later on in the agenda tonight, we have very exciting news for the police department. So maybe you could introduce that topic and say a few words about what we're going to be doing. I mean, I'll give a little context to set the table, which is that we are going to, you know, the future of the department is even more secure now, I think, given the steps we're going to be taking tonight. We're going to be authorizing the hiring of 8 new officers, and they are the result of a rigorous hiring process that you've gone through, and I think the members of the Public Safety Committee are really excited, and I know you are, by the group. And we're also going to be making 2 promotions, which I think strengthens your command and your ability to manage the department. So it's really exciting times, but maybe you could just say a few words now about what that means for the future of the department.
Absolutely. So I look at this as the final, well, yeah, or continuing step in, it's actually a threat that was recognized through our strategic planning process back in 2014, that we were going to start really taking on a lot of retirements, especially retirements in rank. And, you know, that's been identified a long time ago. And I have to say, and I've said it before, public safety and mayor and council, you have recognized that and listened to us as for 6 years as we've gone through this. And it's your proactive steps that is allowing us to address this, again, proactively, which is so important. Once you lose the institutional knowledge, the experience of these officers, the new people coming on kind of lose that culture, if you will, that process that takes place. So this is allowing us to get our officers to the academy. This is allowing us to get them trained and fully implemented kind of as those retirements are taking place. So it's really a seamless transition. And then finally, with regards to past retirements and rank, we've talked about structure for 6 years. It was a very deliberate process. It was identified in numerous conversations and in our strategic plan. And really, we've reached, in my opinion, it's taken 6 years due to a variety of things that we finally have gotten to, because we were very heavily staffed with rank, if you remember, when we first consolidated. And through attrition and through this deliberate process, we're in a spot where we just are achieving, I think, the model rank-wise that will really lead us and keep us consistent in the future. So this is a really important step to me, and it really does epitomize, or it's the conclusion of a lot of discussion and hard work. So I thank you for you know, listening and recognizing that.
And so just to clarify, we'll be hiring 8 new officers, 2 of whom have already been through the academy because they went the alternate route. So they'll be able to start
Yes.
in January, and then 6 will go to the academy.
Yes.
So it staggers, and I remember our conversations were that you thought this was the maximum number of officers that you could successfully integrate, and from a management perspective, right? But also you were weighing that against the need to maintain current service levels, and we need this many officers just given those retirements that are coming, right?
Absolutely. This is going to put us in a spot that's going to allow us, as we experience these retirements, put people in these special spots that we need to and fill them with our new officers. That's going to allow the seamless transition and service to stay where it's at.
Well, I hope maybe Lance and I have already put on the schedule the January 14th meeting when they're going to be sworn in, and I hope when you swear them in you'll be able to say a few words about each of them, because I think people are going to be really excited about the different backgrounds they bring, the diversity they bring, the different experience. So it's a great group.
It's a super diverse group in so many ways. So I think it really just epitomizes our core values and kind of what we stand for. And I always say that, you know, selfishly, I guess, but Princeton standards, our standards they're not just the basic standards. We really have a hard process, and we're looking to recruit a special type of person. I really do feel that we've been successful at that so far, so that's good.
And I hope that Heather and Lance, you're welcome back on the 14th.
We'll be here.
I have
Yeah, Ms.
a
Fargo.
couple of Comments, questions? Welcome back. Sometime last month, there was a story that caught my attention about the number of hate crimes in New Jersey, and Princeton was listed as the top 5. At our public safety meeting, Lieutenant Morgan did a great job of explaining that to us, how the numbers could have been skewed and a misconception. But for the benefit of anyone else who may have, in the public who may have seen that story, do you think you could maybe say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually did see that story, and I did speak to Lieutenant Morgan about that. And from what we discussed, I believe that it's a UCR issue. It's based on UCR and the way that UCR is reported, and the stats were combined between Princeton, being us, and Princeton University Police Department. And those stats show a combination of both of those statistics from each police department. And also, I believe, I don't know if he spoke about this, is the definition that UCR uses for it as well, as for what is construed a hate crime. So it could be graffiti. It doesn't necessarily involve, not that there's a whole array of different crimes. So when you combine ours and theirs, I think that's where that number came from. I don't know if that's what you were.
Yes, that's what he explained to us, so it was very reassuring to hear that. But I just wanted, for the benefit of anyone else in the public who may have seen that story, just to. And the second one, I'm not sure, I haven't seen it in any of the police reports, and they just came up recently, otherwise I would have approached you earlier, about the rise in drug addiction and overdose incidents. And I bring it up because sometime last month, a local family reached out to me because they needed help navigating the system. A son of theirs who went through our public schools, OD'd, but it was in another city. The family's from here, but it happened in another town. And I wonder if we capture that information of when there's an incident involving one of our residents, but there's an incident somewhere else. They say.
So if we have a resident that has an issue in another city.
Right.
No, we don't capture that. Where that event takes place, it will capture. The only way we would get that is if somehow we advocated for that person in some way, and that person was directed to us for, help and treatment. Because we do our care program. That does happen sometimes, where we'll get referrals. People can come to us, we'll provide information, and then we'll get that information that way. But if a resident is in, a neighboring town and has an overdose incident, that would be tracked there, not here.
Okay. And I bring it up because I'm very interested in, and I already talked to Mr. Grosser about
It's a
beginning of
major
the
issue.
year, maybe putting together a task force to work on that issue.
Also, just so you know, Mercer County and the state have gotten extremely aggressive in treating the addiction issue, and specifically with funding. So there's going to be, I think Mercer County, I want to say the state just gave, I think $50,000 for this type of education and rehabilitation services. And our care program is now going to be updated throughout the county. Right now, it's just through a contact that a police officer has, so we get called somewhere, and then we provide, services. Now there's going to be a walk-in component that's going to be highly advertised through the county, where people are going to be invited to walk in with under no fear of charges for possession or being under the influence, where we'll be able to get the person to a bed in a rehab, immediately.
And that's much needed.
Yeah.
And I would hope that some of that funding could go towards hiring a Spanish-speaking counselor that is just desperately needed here in Princeton.
Mr. Quinn?
Chief, I want to ask you a couple questions about use of force, but first I thought you'd like to know that in our last goal-setting session on the 12th, I think it was, the overarching goals were inclusion and social justice. So a lot of talk about equity and civil rights was in the room, and the word police was not mentioned once, which I found sort of, I don't think there are many towns where that word doesn't come up. Now, of course, if the word came up as in our police are awesome, then that would be
Even better.
That would be even better. But I just
Well, there's always room for improvement.
I
That's
thought
right.
you'd like to know.
Right.
So
Thank you
yes,
so
I
much.
know
Thank you.
continuous improvement. So in both September and October, there were use of force incidents, and it appeared that there were multiple officers involved, but no mechanical force was used. Can you just give us the broad outlines
Yes.
of those incidents?
In this, I'll talk in a broad sense, but this is specific to these as well. The overwhelming number of or use of force incidents are what we call, they're just above their physical restraint. It's usually somebody resisting handcuffing, resisting an officer's action, and it's a physical restraint. The overwhelming, almost 100% are that. What's considered minimal force, and that's a good thing. The good news is that we report that as well, that no matter how minimal it is, we make sure it's reported and documented. Secondly, as are these cases, the overwhelming majority in our analysis are due to mental health crisis, and either just mental health or also with an addiction component. It's the overwhelming number of cases. And I've said this before, and I'll repeat it, there's an absolute need for what we call second responders. We are first responders, and we do everything we can to intervene and help, but there's only so much we can do up to a point, and there's a need for a second responder that can come in and provide the assistance that we just don't have the training, the ability, and other restraints that prohibit us from doing that. And I think we're, as a state, we're getting there, but it's a very difficult process. But that, I speak about that generally and about these incidents as well. The other very important piece to what you just said is, and this goes to the reporting, when one person is restrained by two officers, let's say two officers, that is reported as 2 use of force incidents. And what happened is, in that use of force report in the Star Ledger, reported them as individual incidents, but as we went through them, many of them were one person with multiple officers, and it skews the reporting. So, but that's how the state mandates us to report it, so that's how we do it.
Thanks, Chief. Happy holidays.
And just to follow up on Tim's, when you just talked about the second responder, are there such people working anywhere else, and what would be their qualifications? Would they work under the police department? I don't know if you've thought of any of these things, but immediately I'm wondering.
I can comment.
Oh, sure.
If I may, as you know, I'm on the Mercer Council Alcohol and Drug Board, and I'm the treasurer and been there for years, and we do extremely great work. And one of our grants that we received recently was from the state, and we do have folks 24 hours a day that works with people that have overdosed on an ongoing basis. We call them, we see where they are, and the whole 9 yards. That could be an avenue that I could definitely put you in touch with if you don't know now. But
yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. I guess some bigger departments have it. I want to say one of the models that I remember is Seattle possibly had a model where there are, they may not be sworn officers, some are sworn, but they're trained and are able, after the initial officer comes, if it's an overdose, they do the first aid, they get them the treatment. There are people that go and are trained to both provide counseling there and have the contacts and the time to sit and get them into the help that they need. We do that to a point, but it's got to be more, we're just not trained enough to be able, we fail a lot because people, you have to be at the right point in there, if it's an addiction especially, at the right point in their addiction to take that help. And we just don't have the, some are great at it, some officers are great at it, but we just don't have that training to get, and we're police officers and we represent a different thing possibly to some than help. And there's a fear component. So if, in my research, I want to say it was Seattle, has an excellent second responder that will go to these calls, stay with the person, follow up, as Lance just said, and then in days after, as they're released, make a call, go to their house, follow up, and until they can provide the help that they need. We just don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, it seems like a really good idea, and we should talk about it on in our goal-setting session. I mean, so in Seattle, is that a police, is it a member of the police department, or?
I believe they're under the police department, but I read an article on it fairly recently, and I want to say they're not sworn officers. They're under the guise of the police department, but they're more of counselors.
That seems like a really good idea. And they also do the mental health counseling.
Yes, and Corner House serves, we rely on Corner House a lot. They serve that role to a point, but in my mind, it's more of a kind of like a mobile outreach, kind of like the county has, but just for addiction, where especially addiction, not just addiction, but where people can come from Princeton, from here, and respond out. It's just it's a need.
Great. Did you take note of that, Mark? Because we can make sure that gets on the goals list for 2019. Anybody else for the chief?
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah. All right. And now we come to the 2018 goals update.
Keeping with the tradition tonight, I want to first start and say thank you. It has been a joy working with you, Kathy. We will all miss you. And to Heather and Lance, you guys have been kind of the conscience of this council, and I really do appreciate everything you do, and I want to thank you and wish you well. Okay, what we're going to do tonight is just review the goals and objectives for the third and fourth quarter councils, the status of council's projects, and what I'm going to do is just kind of review, run through some of the projects that we've been working on. And as you know, this year we've had a very aggressive goals and objectives for this year, some very comprehensive goals. And we'll start with the neighborhood character study. We've completed that first phase of that project. The ordinance has been adopted, and that has been completed for this year. I'm going to jump around just a little bit. If you have any questions on that page, just stop if you want to jump in. Next thing I want to jump to is the affordable housing plan. That process continues. We are still in the mediation process. In fact, we had a mediation session this afternoon. There is another mediation session scheduled for January 7th. And as we move forward in the mediation process, we'll begin to fill in some of these areas where I have to be determined in terms of time frames. But we do hopefully expect to start seeing some movement, hopefully in February of this year. Next thing I just want to note on the land use harmonization, we've completed phase 1 of that. We've left phase 2 for 2019 as we seek to get a new planner. We want to have them involved in that process. I'm going to jump a couple of pages and then go to page 4, where we're going to talk about the design of historic preservation. Initially, the project was for the business district. We've redefined that a little bit, and we're going to start off with one of the districts, and that will be the John Witherspoon Historic District. We have prepared the scope of work for a consultant. That RFP has been completed. In its draft form, it will be reviewed by Historic Preservation in 2019 with an expectation that we would have a consultant hired and then the adoption of standards later in 2019.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Has that RFP been put out yet, or is it just still being drafted?
It's drafted. It needs to be reviewed by the Historic Preservation before it goes on to the street.
Okay.
It's presented.
Because I think there's still a need for the standards for the business district. And so I don't know if there's a way to put out it with like both options and people can bid on both or one or the other for 2019. I'm worried about, well, I don't want to get too far into the details. It's just, I feel like the business district was picked for a particular reason. So I just don't want to put them off till 2020 necessarily.
Actually, what we can do in this, what we want to do, because they are two distinct areas, what I would suggest is it's a separate process. We can, in 2019, do another RFP would be a quite different RFP for the business district. And we could do that in 2019. That's kind of phase 2. The next piece we have is the parking meter installation. The parking meters have been installed. We continue to work on that process. And the last piece of that will be the transfer of the smart cards in April. We'll have some additional information for the public.
Can I interrupt for a sec too? Because as I was going through, of the various pieces of the scope that you mentioned in the report, there was no mention made of reviewing the land use ordinances and those parking requirements. And I thought that that was an important part of a comprehensive review of our parking policies in town. Not, you've mentioned here the meters and the permits, but not the review of the land use ordinances. And I hope that's still part of the process.
Just going back and looking at there's actually a phase 2 in the parking. I don't see land use listed in our initial goals, but I do think that's something that we need to include in looking at phase 2, because I know we did discuss one of the things was the parking bank and things of that sort. So we definitely need to have that added into the 2019 phase 2.
Yeah.
But I don't think the consultant that we're using, we're not talking about using that same consultant for those kinds of discussions, correct? Because the parking meter consultant that we're using now is like for meters and hours, right? I mean, I wanted to know.
She's actually made some recommendations on those components. She's also going to be working on the permit process for the permits. I know she's already made some recommendations. And again,
but I mean, is her expertise in land use? I didn't think so. So I just wanted to make sure that we don't. I mean, we make a deliberate decision about that.
Yeah, point well taken.
Yeah, it does need to be coordinated, though. I mean, because there is interaction between these 3 different pieces.
Next piece we have is the implementation of health and all policies. That has been completed. Going to page 6, negotiations with PCTV. That process, it's on its way. We've made a counter proposal to PCTV. We will have our next negotiation sessions in 2019 with them. Next piece, I'm jumping to page 7, which we're exploring the shared services with the school district. We have prepared an RFP. That RFP has been sent out. We've received our responses to the RFP for a consultant to provide a feasibility study. That will be reviewed by the subcommittee in January with hiring consultant sometime in January, and hopefully for the completion of the feasibility study, February, April. And then jumping to page 8, we've developed the merit pay policy that has been completed, and we'll have our first recommendations and candidates in March of 2019. The one place I want to note, development of the formal review process for filling vacancies. That's one of the things that will be moved into 2019. There has not been progress in that. We've focused on a lot of the other different areas, but we will pick that up in 2019.
I'm sorry, Mark, can I jump in for a sec? I'd like to go back to page 7 just to talk a little bit about the vehicle inventory, because I know that Sustainable Princeton's been doing some really good work at looking at sharing vehicles, and I guess the report makes it look like this has all been completed, but I think that in terms of
It's actually still open.
it's still open.
It's still
Yes,
open.
exactly.
It's not completed. If you note, there's a couple of still open items there. It's just progressing. Because as you can see, we're still pending the adjustments to the auction. We did complete initially the use of the electric vehicles. There was a presentation provided by Sustainable Princeton in terms of giving us some alternatives there. That was completed. And right now we're just working on the last piece, which is the inventory itself. Now what page were we on here? Page 9. Okay. Next issue we have is the conveyance of the Herringtown Woods. That has been completed. We are now working with the Friends for the lease for the restoration project of the Bevelin House. We have completed a draft lease that has been provided to the Friends of Herringtown Woods. The next steps, we'll be meeting with them to review that lease in 2019. Hopefully, we'd like to see that lease authorized sometime in February. And at the bottom, the promotion of captains and nutrition plan police department. As you can see later on the agenda, you'll see that issues. And again, we talked about tonight the Mercer at Play grant. One thing we can talk about in terms of the staff transitions, we replaced the arborist, the municipal planner. We have completed our interviews. We've made a offer to the planner. We expect to have a planner on board. We can't yet release it because we're still going through the process of who the planner is, but we have made that initial offer to the planner, and we've replaced the municipal prosecutor. And then the other thing I want to highlight, and just some of the other issues that we're going through, one of the things that we did not take an action on was the expanding the broadband services under a shared service area in Princeton. That's something that we can take on, just something we haven't been able to get to. The other issues I want to go through are some major construction projects on their way, one being River Road. We anticipate the construction to start in April of 2019. The Harrison Street garage repairs and reconstruction, components of that are on their way as we speak. The John Street improvements, they're still working on the design. One of the things, potential things that we're looking at there is we had a cell tower company looking to lease. There may be a potential in the Salt Dome to actually create a cell tower within the structure and also create an opportunity for leasing, so we're exploring that at the moment. And any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Shield?
I asked all my questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for compiling this. So this will be one of the ingredients of our discussions in early January when we're setting goals for 2019. So we'll be looking at this list, especially the ones that don't have the completed stamp next to them, plus the minutes from the meetings we've had over the past several weeks with the boards and committee chairs. And it'd be great if we can actually get that sent out to council before Christmas, like those, both the minutes from those, even if they're draft minutes from those meetings, and then this list, and then people can review that over the holidays and see if there's anything else that is pressing that's not on there. And then that can be the sort of basis of our conversations in early January. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so now we come to, I think, a pretty brief work session. And hopefully, I should have called Dwayne and Eve's attention to this item, but this is the draft meeting schedule for 2019. So hopefully everyone can just take a look at this. We don't have to discuss it in depth tonight, but just making sure that there are no holiday dates here or other obvious conflicts, and this will officially vote on it at reorg.
I'll just comment that I did already check against the Jewish holidays for 2019. There are no conflicts.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you,
Let's just
David.
start. Yes. Okay. Are there any other comments on the dates? Nope. Okay. Then we'll move on to the ordinance public hearing for tonight, 2018-25. An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of Princeton amending salaries and compensation of certain personnel of Municipality of Princeton. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It was moved by Mr. Quinn.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any further discussion on this? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry, wait, I have to open up the public hearing on this ordinance. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and then ask you to call the roll, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
And the ordinance passes unanimously. And next we come to resolutions. And I would recommend maybe taking these first three resolutions in a block. 18-394, resolution approving the promotion of Lieutenant Christopher Morgan to the position of Captain of the Princeton Police Department. 18-395, resolution approving the promotion of Officer James Martinez to the position of Corporal of the Princeton Police Department. And Resolution 18-396, resolution approving the appointment of probationary patrol officers Brandon Rios, Rebecca Nelson, Joseph Alvanzado Jr., Aaron Cipollone, hopefully I pronounced that right, David Garcia, McLean Lipschutz, Terry King, Dante Fossarelli, and Dante Fossarelli to the Princeton Police Department. And the swearing in for all of these new officers will be on January 14th, 2019.
Mayor, I'll move all three of these.
Second.
So it's been moved by Ms. Howard and seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And congratulations to the chief. And yeah, and once again, we'll have the official swearing in on January 14th. Next is 18-397, resolution authorizing a one-year contract extension to Stouts Charter Service for the operation and maintenance of the Freebie Community Shuttle Service from January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019, with the provision of a second one-year extension not to exceed $125,801.56. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion. But
Second.
I also wanted the council members to know that we are looking at we're looking at this and figuring out the most efficient and best way to operate the freebie, and that might include some changes. One of the things that we're really hoping is that we can coordinate better with Tiger Transit of Princeton University, but we couldn't do that fast enough. I mean, we have this contract will get us through, but we are looking carefully at changing things.
Okay, great, thank
So-
you.
If I could just ask a quick question, I thought I had seen somewhere else, maybe in the consent agenda, a smaller contract for Greater Mercer TMA for help with the freebie. Is that related to the evaluation that you're talking about, Jenny?
No, they manage the freebie for us. So they keep track of the ridership. They deal with stouts and deal with the issues that come up. Deanna, is there more to that?
So they take care of all the customer service, and they also manage our documents, so the mapping and distribution of information as well.
Has this resolution been moved and seconded? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 18398, resolution authorizing a one-year contract extension to Edward H. Cray for 2019 traffic signal maintenance and construction services with provisions for a second one-year contract extension not to exceed $95,150. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Next is 18399, resolution authorizing the one-year extension of transportation services for Crosstown to Greater Mercer Transportation Management Association for 2019, not to exceed $126,324. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
Moved by Ms. Fraga.
I'll second it, but
And-
I also wanted to, I don't know who is going to, I forget who talked about looking at this, at the criteria, just again, and make sure, look at who's writing it, just to make sure that we're being frugal and providing a service to people who need it, because it's very expensive.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, all in
But wait,
favor?
so who's going to do that?
Oh, I think I see Mr. DeShield nodding his head.
Okay.
So when would you report back on that, like in, April or something, or? March, okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes unanimously. Next, there are three resolutions that all have to deal with the Princeton Theological Seminary redevelopment project. And is there a motion to move 18400, 18401, and 18402 in block?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Cohen and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. Thank you. Any discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolutions passed unanimously. Next is 18403, resolution authorizing professional services agreement for supplemental public health nursing services with Carol Nicholas for 2019, not to exceed $26,000.
Mayor, I think we can combine that with the next one.
Oh, yeah, okay, for both of those. They're two public, two nursing services, resolution 18403, 18404. Moved by Ms. Howard.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Liberman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those resolutions passed unanimously. Next is 18405, resolution authorizing Princeton Community Housing to continue to serve as the administrative agent for the Princeton Affordable Housing Program for the calendar year 2019, not to exceed $36,048.
I'll move.
It's moved by Ms.
Second.
Fraga, seconded by Mr. Liberman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. 18406, resolution authorizing the extension of the existing contract with Central Jersey Waste and Recycling for solid and bulky waste collection of 1 year, 2019, not to exceed $421,146. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Liberman. Mr. Liberman, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes unanimously. And next is 18407, resolution authorizing an interlocal services and joint purchase agreement with the Township of Lawrence in connection with operations at the Joseph H. Maher Jr. Ecological Facility. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Quinn.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. And now I just remembered that I skipped over council reports, which we didn't. We did announcements, yeah, so I want to see if anybody has any reports.
I do not.
Okay, any reports? Any reports?
I have a kind of a preliminary report, and that the mayor and I met with the committee chair of Complete Streets. We're looking at, since 3 years ago, we restructured that committee, and we're looking at how it's working, and we're considering making some changes. So we'll probably bring that at, maybe at the first meeting after reorg to the council. So if anybody wants to talk to me about that, let me know.
Any reports? Ms. Fargo?
Mine actually belongs to Human Services, but if you don't mind, Heather, I want to report on the Princeton Human Services gift drive. This was their 20th year of holiday gift distribution, and I happened to be there this past Saturday when they had I think it's the first time they had a big celebration, and it was a wonderful, wonderful event. Lots of kids and families. I was there painting faces. I painted a lot of Santa faces, so even though they had Santa present, there were a lot of little Santas and little helpers running around. But I really want to commend Princeton Human Services and their community partners, including the YWCA and Labyrinth Books, among others, for just such a wonderful event that I know made the Kids' Day.
I just want to comment. I think this was the largest gift drive ever, like 298 or 297 gifts, which was incredible.
It looked like Santa's workshop. It's just really, it was an awesome sight.
Excellent, thank you for that. I had a few reports. The first one was earlier today. There was an employee award ceremony that was really nice. It was very well attended, and it just was a reminder that we're so fortunate to have such a great staff, and there's a lot of camaraderie, and it was a great event. Let's see. Everybody might have heard that New Jersey Transit announced earlier today that they've met their deadline for installing positive train control. Unfortunately, they're still non-committal about when the Dinky is going to be restarting. So I plan to call them every day from now until I get a positive answer. Finally, I was at a workshop in Austin at the end of last week. It was something called the Mayor's Institute on City Design, and it's a joint project with the National Conference of Mayors and the National Endowment of the Arts. And I want to thank some of the staff who helped get me ready for that, including Ms. Stockton and Mr. DeShield. But it was a really great workshop. Still downloading and processing all the things I learned, but there's really great information there about community engagement through a project. It was a small group, so there were 7 mayors and then 8 designers who were there. And one of the great things about having gone to this program is now Princeton is given special status if we apply for an NEA grant program for placemaking called Our Town. So they give out grants, I think it's like between $50,000 and $200,000. And so I'd encourage everybody to go to the site and look through projects they funded in the past. And I think it definitely makes sense for us to try to apply for something for next year. So I'll be typing up my notes and sharing them with everybody, but it was really great. And are there any staff reports? Nope, okay. In that case, we move on to the consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature, passed by single vote. Are there any items anybody would like removed from the consent agenda? And if not, is there a motion to approve the consent?
So moved.
It's moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Ms. Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Point of personal privilege.
Sorry, yes, I take that back.
So moved.
Second.
That's it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.